Most corporate sustainability initiatives collapse before reaching the market. The failure doesn't happen in the boardroom. It happens at the project execution level. The root cause of this failure is structural. Organizations treat the traditional triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit as a narrative overlay, attempting to bolt it onto a project after the design phase is already finished. When a project captures sustainability metrics only at its conclusion, the resulting data is essentially exhaust. It becomes an exercise in backward-looking reporting rather than integrated value creation. To correct this, the architecture has to change. The GPM P5 standard moves sustainability to project inception. It front-loads the metrics, establishing a rigid 5-pillar framework before a single dollar is spent. By expanding the traditional model, P5 forces accountability on the actual deliverable through the product category, measuring lifespan and servicing. It also scrutinizes the delivery mechanism itself under the process category, tracking both efficiency and fairness. Adopting this comprehensive framework is a critical theoretical upgrade. However, without a systematic mechanism to calculate these new metrics, P5 remains an abstract intent. Moving from these theoretical pillars to actual impact requires a structural transition, converting a project narrative into a measurable data pipeline. That pipeline is the Sustainability Integration Model, or SIM, operating as a 5-phase dynamic engine. This engine takes high-level objectives, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and converts them into actionable project data. The pipeline begins with Phase 1, Ground It. This stage focuses entirely on internal governance and mapping the baseline capabilities of your personnel. The rule at this stage is absolute. Without verified internal governance and credentialed talent operating the system, subsequent project data cannot be considered audit-ready. This rigorous, systemic capability mapping replaces vague corporate messaging with a verifiable talent asset. This architectural shift requires a project manager to integrate every specific task into a legally defensible corporate ecosystem. The verified team moves into Phase 2, Scope It. Here, macro-organizational priorities are stripped down and translated into highly localized, site-specific diagnostics. Teams use a dual materiality matrix to plot P5 elements against 2 axes, financial impact and external environmental impact. The absolute rule here is precision. If a metric cannot be proven material to the project, the practitioner must not measure it. Within this strictly scoped boundary, the P5 product category forces managers to account for the long-term viability of their deliverable, rather than ending their responsibility at the initial handover. Similarly, the P5 process category is scoped to specifically measure both the systemic efficiency and the ethical fairness of the delivery mechanism itself. This localized scope dictates the exact raw technical data the team is authorized to capture in the subsequent phase. Skipping this filtration phase introduces severe operational risk. Capturing irrelevant data wastes project resources and actively dilutes the integrity of the final audit. Ruthless precision in scoping creates the protective boundary required to execute error-free carbon math. This brings us to Phase 3, Calculate It. Often called the engine room, this is where qualitative sustainability intent is transformed into defensible hard math. The mandatory inputs for this phase are raw physical data logs, such as operational fuel usage and utility bills gathered from the project sites. This operational data is funneled directly into the Green Skills Gateway to undergo standardized mathematical conversion. The specific output of this engine transforms those raw physical inputs into standardized Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions data. This phase must remain purely mathematical. Introducing any narrative bias here immediately destroys the integrity of the entire pipeline. Once converted, these standardized greenhouse gas outputs are funneled directly into a centralized ESG KPI calculator. The function of the KPI calculator is continuous aggregation, processing the data to populate a live, quantitative corporate performance dashboard. Executing this correctly creates a verifiable, unbroken data trail from the initial raw utility bill directly to the final executive dashboard metric. This unbroken mathematical chain is the sole barrier separating a truly sustainable corporate asset from an accusation of greenwashing. The verified math is then pushed into Phase 4, comply it. This is the layer where internal project data interfaces with external global markets. The raw output from a live KPI dashboard is commercially useless if it cannot survive a strict regulatory audit. The dashboard data must first be assessed using a diagnostic tool, such as the MITI ESG Compass, to secure baseline national trade readiness. Once verified, the process shifts to structuring this internal data into a formal narrative public disclosure document. The exact formatting of this disclosure is dictated by specific global exchange rules, with frameworks like ISSB and GRI acting as the mandatory benchmarks. The legal stakes here are absolute. Adhering to these rigid disclosure frameworks is exactly how corporations defend themselves against greenwashing litigation. Phase 4 acts as the crucible, transforming raw internal math into a legally defensible, outward-facing market disclosure. The pipeline culminates in Phase 5, value it. The ultimate goal of this entire data journey is commercialization. The verified technical math from Phase 3 and the regulatory readiness achieved in Phase 4 are combined to form a single, highly leveraged strategic asset. This asset is then applied to design resilient new business blueprints, directly leveraging the project's proven sustainability. This final phase empowers the organization to actively monetize its verified data, capturing green market gaps that competitors simply cannot legally claim. When executed through this rigorous pipeline, sustainability ceases to be a compliance cost center. It operates as a verified profit engine. The orchestration of this complete end-to-end ecosystem is defined by the GPM concept of PRISM, Projects Integrating Sustainable Methods. PRISM replaces the traditional linear delivery mechanism with a closed-loop regenerative lifecycle. True project success now requires the ability to diagnose, measure, disclose, and strategize real-world impacts simultaneously. Modern project success requires moving beyond the constraints of time and budget to architecting a fully integrated audit-ready ecosystem. True sustainability is an engineering discipline. Practitioners must master the math, build the pipeline, and deliver measurable market value.